Yorkshire, with the people around us that we wanted to be there. And subsequently, you know, later on in our extended holiday to California, it was a place where we had family and friends. It was a place where my grandma wanted to go and see her new great-grandkids. So we took my grandma with us, left her with my auntie and uncle, and we decided to do a bit of touring around California. And everything was going fine, apart from the fact that Kate just wasn't really feeling well. She had back pains, she was tired, and she just wasn't feeling herself. And we put that down to a few things. We put it down to tiredness from working long hours as a junior doctor. We put it down to jet lag from obviously the travel across to America. And then we just put it down to being in different hotels, different cars, as we travelled across the state. But there came a point, and this is the last photograph that we've actually got taken of Kate prior to me the following day finding her writhing around in agony on the bed in the accommodation where we were staying with severe kidney pain. She had been taking painkillers, paracetamol, ibuprofen, etc. in advance of that, so these drugs were not working. And it was at that point, as the non-medic in the relationship, that I decided we had to get Kate into ER in America. And if we hadn't have done that at that point, 24 hours after, Kate would have probably died there and then in America with acute renal failure. So we went into hospital in the US, we got patched up, Kate had some stents inserted, we were made fit to fly home, and then we flew back to the UK to pursue further treatment within the amazing NHS, which is an organisation that I'm passionate about because not only did it give Kate her career, but it also gave her an extended period of time at the end of her life, which we didn't expect to have for the reasons that I'll come on to. The next 6 months, Kate was in hospital for 4.5 months out of that 6 months, which was towards the end of 2011. And throughout that time, every result, every scan, every scenario that was played out, the results always came back as the worst case scenario. And it soon became apparent that we were dealing with a terminal cancer. And it soon became apparent that that terminal cancer, Kate was given 6 to 12 months to live. So our life plans at that stage were thrown in the bin. Our plans that we had for a family, forget about. Our plans that we had for travelling in 5-10 years' time, that it wasn't going to happen. We had to concertina our lives into a much shorter space of time. But on the flip side, Kate was terminally ill and she was in hospital for 4.5 months out of that 6 months. And she, through the power of social media, she kept connected to the outside world, and she kept inspiring other people because of how she approached her illness. She was writing a diary which turned out into a book, which is still available to buy today. She went on to write a second book as well, and all the profits go to the charity. And she was inspiring hundreds of thousands of people across the world because of how she approached her journey. We then got to New Year's Eve again at the end of 2011, and we were watching the fireworks over the city skyline in Leeds, and Kate was in hospital, and we made a decision at that point that enough was enough. The chemotherapy that she'd been having for that period of time wasn't giving her the quality of life versus quantity of life that she had left, and so we made a decision to stop chemotherapy at that point so we could enjoy as much of our lives that we have left together. And partway through that 4.5 months of being in hospital, Kate was told by one of her consultants that, "I don't think that cancer's going to let you work again, Kate. I don't think you're going to be able to be back on the wards doing the job that you love in the NHS." And Kate said to that consultant, "I will work again. In some capacity, I will work again because it's something that I want to do. It's part of the rest of my life that I want to achieve." 3 weeks after making that decision to stop chemotherapy, Kate was back on the wards, doing the job that she loved to do, looking after older people 3 days a week, and that picture on the right-hand side is Kate back on the wards. There then followed a lengthy period of time where Kate was actually quite well. You know, to the outside world looking in, you wouldn't have thought there's anything wrong with Kate. You know, she was still working, her hair had grown back, she was doing so many activities, we were ticking off things on the bucket list. Like I said, we renewed our wedding vows as one of those things. And it made Kate think about her own core values as a doctor, and this is even before the campaign started. Because she was being asked to speak at events and because she was being followed across social media, she was very much thinking about her values. And I could talk you through the values now, but I'd rather Kate talk you through her values. So I'm going to show you a video that was taken in 2014, so it was after the Hello My Name Is campaign started. So she does mention the Hello My Name Is campaign. But then when we come back, I will talk you through the campaign and how it started and where it's going. So Kate's values, like I said, and this video is available on our website, so if people do want to go and watch the values firsthand from Kate, then by all means go onto the website. But she talks around the values in 4 separate ways. And the first one that Kate talks around is around communication, which is something that everyone talks about in business, in the NHS, across healthcare, around how important communication is between healthcare workers, between patients, and between individuals at all levels in any organisation. And there's various forms of communication that can be construed as being good, and there's also various forms of communication that could be improved on. So the examples that Kate talks around are when Kate was first diagnosed with her terminal cancer, which is a desmoplastic small round cell tumour, which is a very rare form of sarcoma. She was in a side room in a hospital. The consultant came in and pretty much without looking at Kate said, "Your cancer has spread." And then they couldn't leave the room quick enough to answer any queries that Kate had and to talk to her around the ramifications of that and the next steps. So that's probably an example of not how to communicate bad news. But then on the flip side to that, there was another episode where a different consultant came into the room to talk to Kate about her about the next steps on treatment, and this consultant sat down next to the bed next to Kate. He actually sat on the hospital bed, which is against the rules in the NHS, obviously, so that he was at the same eye level as Kate, because something that's very important is about being at eye level. He introduced himself and he talked to Kate about the spread of the cancer and the treatment that was needed. He then took a few moments of silence for Kate to gather her thoughts, and then he was there to answer any questions that Kate had at that point and to also be there for the emotional breakdown that occurred. That was an example of how communication probably should be done. And it also relates to the second value, which is all around how the little things really matter. So somebody introducing themselves might seem like a very, very small thing, and it is in essence, but it's something that doesn't happen every time. It's something that doesn't happen in healthcare across the world. It's things like making somebody a cup of tea. It's like sitting down next to the bed on a chair so that they're at the same eye level rather than looming over somebody. It's those little things that do really make a difference, and everyone can do them in their own right. And it might seem insignificant, but something as simple as just asking how somebody is when they're in a hospital bed might be the only conversation that that person has that day or in that sort of few hours. So those things really do matter. The one thing that Kate was passionate about in life, as well as in healthcare, was around knowing exactly what was going on for her. So this was even before she was ill. You know, Kate was quite a passionate person about what was going on with her. So she wanted to know everything. And she was referred to, while she was in hospital, you know, within earshot by people on the wards as that girl with DSRCT. So with a few sentences, she was a rare cancer. She wasn't an individual, she was just a rare cancer. And is that right in this day and age, that people should be able to talk about a patient who's literally, you know, a few meters away and talk about them as though they are just a rare form of cancer and not an actual individual? And person-centred care is something that should be and needs to be even more at the forefront of what we do within healthcare. And then the final piece around Kate's values was around seeing her as an individual and not seeing her as that patient or rare cancer. You know, Kate was my wife, Kate was an auntie, she was a sister, you know, she was an auntie to, like I said, at the time when she did the speech, she was an auntie to a newborn that was coming along. She loved to bake, you can probably gather she loved to bake. She loved to play the flute, she played in an orchestra, she loved to raise money for charity. She loved to do a whole host of things, far more than just having a rare cancer. And that was what Kate wanted to be remembered for, and that's what Kate will be remembered for all those other things that she did, aside from being terminally ill. And I think it's something that we sometimes forget within healthcare and within, you know, the wider world, around making sure that we're seeing people for who they are and not for what illness that they may have or for what disability they may have, because everyone in the world is equally important and everyone can make a difference to other people. But like I said, that video is available on the website as well, so if you want to go on there, it's an extended video, it's sort of 25 minutes, that was just a short clip today, and there's the extended video on there. So then, like I said, we had a period of relatively good living, and in that period we managed to do a whole host of things, one of which was to raise a huge amount of money for charity. And Kate was passionate about doing things for other people, one of which was to raise that money for the other charities. But then the cancer woke up, and Kate had to go back in for further treatment in the NHS, and we thought it was the right decision to make at the time, because she'd had such a good output from the first round of chemotherapy, having sort of 15 to 18 months of relatively good living. We'd be daft not to try again with more chemotherapy. So we had more chemotherapy, and it was on the back of one of those admissions where Kate was in hospital. She was being seen by a nurse who didn't introduce themselves, took blood from her whilst talking to another nurse who was looking after another patient on the same ward. She was then seen by a consultant who came in to see her with their entourage, looming over the bed, and didn't introduce themselves. And because Kate was so high profile across social media, and because it was such a rare form of cancer, a lot of the junior doctors and a lot of the consultants wanted them to go and see Kate because of the rareness of it, but also because of who she was. So people, it was almost like she was a healthcare celebrity. And she never saw that, you know, and she never used to like the word inspirational or inspiring, but she certainly was. And you know, I can quite easily say that, but she certainly was. But she never saw that. She just wanted to make a difference for other people, irrespective of what's going on in her own life. We then had other people come in to see us that day, across healthcare, not introduce themselves. And then we met Brian. Now, Brian had a name. Brian was a porter. He came to take Kate down to the to have a scan, taking extra care through the hospital corridors in Leeds, talking about cricket, because he must have picked up at some point that Kate liked her cricket. So talking about things that were just normal, so not healthcare related at all. And it's those little things, like I mentioned earlier on, that really do make a difference. And then that evening, Kate and I were talking about this when we were back on the ward, and reflecting on the day's events, and Kate was whinging. She was whinging about the lack of introductions. And the lack of introductions on that particular day really made us both think about things. And for those people that work for me, they will know that one of my big gripes is when people come to me with an issue but aren't prepared to go and do something about it. And I think it's true in the world. There's far too many people in this world who are quite easy to whinge and moan about things that are going on, but aren't prepared to go away and actually do something themselves about it. They expect other people to do something different in order to make that thing better. Why can't you make a difference? Why can't you be the change that you want to see in the world? And so that evening I just said to Kate simply, look darling, you need to stop whinging, or we need to do something about it, because we can't carry on. At that point, Kate had around 25,000 followers across Twitter. So I said, why don't we use your already big social media presence to start some kind of campaign? And we said, let's call it something like hashtag Hello My Name Is. And it was born. It was born from a conversation between a terminally ill lady and her non-medic husband in a hospital in Leeds. It was born. And that's where it started. That is where the Hello My Name Is journey started. That was on the 30th of August 2013. And look where it's gone from there. And to be honest, at the start, should it have been needed? Probably not. You know, it's 4 words, it takes very little time. But the amount of response that we got back after Kate had posted this tweet was unbelievable. The amount of examples we were getting from people across the world saying that the introductions weren't happening in their hospital or in their healthcare setting. I didn't design the logo either, by the way. I know it says on there that she sent me home to design the logo. It was one of our designer friends that designed it, and what we said to him is, the only thing it's got to incorporate is a smile, because it's hard to actually say the 4 words and mean it without smiling at your patient or your colleague or whoever you are talking to. So we had to incorporate the smile, which it clearly does. And it became a social media phenomenon quite early on. You know, the first week, the first 2 weeks, the amount of retweets, the amount of trends that were going on with it, the amount of followers that Kate was gaining because of the campaign. Such a simple idea that started on social media and then just, you know, organically grew across other platforms as well. Kate's brother designed a website for us, which is still in operation today, and that holds a whole host of information around the campaign. There's the videos on there, there is photo galleries, there's educational resources, there is the links to be able to buy the name badges and lanyards, and various other things regarding the campaign and regarding the tour. We then started to be asked to write blogs in different journals. This is just an example from the BMJ a couple of years ago that, you know, Kate was asked to write. And it clearly shows the doctor there at the same eye level as the patient introducing themselves. And this is just one from, you know, a whole catalogue of examples that Kate was being asked to write in. And I think there's a point as well where Kate was still terminally ill, and I think a lot of people from time to time, you know, family included, probably forgot that Kate was terminally ill and she was going to die in the not too distant future. And that was something that we kept on having to talk to people about, because the other thing as well in society is that we don't talk a lot about death and dying, and we need to, because it's going to happen to everyone. There's an interesting stat at a conference that I went to last week on the screen, and it said 100% of all British people will die. That's a stat. And, you know, and it's funny, but it's true, but we don't talk about it, and it's something that we should, and especially now in social media world, we can talk about that more openly, and there's a lot more resources behind it. We then started to get a lot of photographs through across the world with people doing selfie campaigns, people having charity bake sales. It went across into the police force in the UK. People were having name badges made by different companies. And like I said, all of this was to raise awareness of the campaign, to raise awareness of Kate, but also to make a difference to other people, to make a difference to patients. And what we're not saying with the campaign is that people weren't doing this before, because a lot of people working in the NHS would have been introducing themselves before. So what I don't want to come across as patronising to those people that did, but there's also a lot of people that didn't. And it's that reminder, refresher that was needed at the time, which has obviously grown across the world. We then move on to 2014, and Kate was asked to present a poster at the Equality Forum in Paris. She was walking around the conference floor, being asked for photographs, being asked to speak to people, and she managed to indoctrinate her own healthcare hero, Don Berwick, at that conference. And it was at that conference, on the journey home from that conference, where Kate started to talk about her legacy. So as I said at the start, legacy is important. And she said to me on the train on the way home, she said, Chris, if I was to die today, I know that I made a difference in healthcare. I know that my legacy will live on for future generations because I've done something different to help other people. And she could rest easy knowing that she'd done that. But that was in 2014. You know, Kate should have been long dead by then if you listened to the doctors in the early stages. But she wasn't. She was still travelling the country, talking at events, still working, still doing charity bake sales, still jumping out of planes, still swimming English Channel, still doing various things to raise money for charity and to help other people whilst being terminally ill. So the campaign was born in the Leeds Teaching Hospital, and I don't think they want to be remembered for the hospital where the campaign started. It could have been any hospital in the world, it just so happened it was in Leeds. They are now the flagship trust for the campaign. The chief exec there, every time he welcomes new starters to the trust, he talks about the campaign, he talks about Kate and the story behind it, and he actively endorses the campaign across the actual trust itself. He wears his name badge with pride, and he's always talking the campaign. But there is a key difference between an endorsement from senior management and an enforcement from senior management. So the campaign does not want to become some kind of tick box exercise that people have to do. It's something that people should be wanting to do, especially if they work in healthcare, should be wanting to do for their patients and for their colleagues and relatives. So it should be something that's endorsed but not enforced, is the key message from there. And Kate also worked in Leeds for a time while she was terminally ill. So some days she was going in and having treatment, and then 2 weeks later she'd be back on the wards in the same hospital, actually working as a doctor. So she had to live with that balance whilst going through her treatment and her professional career. And she did actually become a consultant before she died, which was one of her key ambitions in her career, to become a consultant, and she made that. She got to become a consultant. The NHS approached us in 2014, wanting to remember Kate through the Compassionate Care Awards that we now present every year at NHS Expo. So that started in 2014. They approached us 6 months prior to the actual event taking place. And Kate, being Kate, said, well, I might not be here, I might be dead by the time the event takes place. So I'll record a video. So she recorded a video to play at the event just in case she wasn't with us still. She was there to present the awards in 2014 and in 2015. 2016 was the first year where I presented them on behalf of obviously Kate and the Compassionate Care Awards for the NHS. And this year we've just presented them a few months ago to recognise individuals and organisations that have gone above and beyond on compassionate care. But like I say, I think people that work within the NHS all deserve the accolades and all deserve the awards because they do an amazing job every second of every day. And I was truly humbled this year because I was asked to present certificates to those people that were first on scene at the atrocities that happened in Manchester. So that was a humbling experience for myself, and obviously something I would rather not have been doing because it would have meant that that wouldn't have occurred, but you know, a humbling experience all the same. So if you've got something as well that costs very little money, takes very little time, and improves patient care, the politicians want to get involved. So we were invited to go and speak to the then Prime Minister David Cameron at Downing Street, and we had a productive sort of 15-20 minute meeting with him around the campaign a few years ago. We then got asked to go and speak with Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland. She pledged some money to the campaign up in Scotland as well. And a few months ago I was invited back again to talk about the next steps of the campaign up in Scotland. Kate also had a suite named after her down in Watford in the hospital, and you've got Jeremy Hunt there having his picture taken outside the Granger suite in Watford Hospital. And then it was also mentioned as part of the response in the Francis inquiry. So going back to social media, one of the best ways to get any message across social media is to get endorsements for the campaign or for the campaign that's running from high profile, highly followed individuals, business leaders, celebrities. And so here's just a collection of some of those celebrities and business leaders that have endorsed the campaign. Through the contacts that Kate and I amassed over the last few years and through the business that I work in, we've managed to get those contacts. And it's little things like Kate wanted to go and see Kylie Minogue in concert as part of her bucket list. So, you know, we booked tickets, as anybody would, book tickets to go and see her. But then I thought, I want Kate to experience the best in life that she can have, because she deserves the best in life. So I made my mission to make sure that anything that we did, irrespective of where it was in the world, I would go above and beyond to try and surprise Kate with little things. So things like going backstage to meet Kylie Minogue, to get her to endorse the campaign, especially given that she's been through cancer in her life, was one of my missions as we went to the concert, and it was a complete surprise to Kate, and you know, it was an amazing day. Then other things that are on there. And Sir Richard Branson's one of our key endorsers for the campaign, and I will relate back to that as we go later into the presentation. We then move into 2015, and we wanted to almost relaunch the campaign across the NHS. So we enlisted the help of an organisation called Listening to Action, who contacted every NHS trust, asked them if they would like to be involved, and on that day we managed to touch around 400,000 NHS staff through their own individual trusts, endorsing the campaign and launching the campaign within the trust. It was also quite a strange day in our household because the cancer had woken up again, so Kate was having chemotherapy. So we started the day by going to the radio studio in Leeds, and Kate gave 2 radio interviews. We then went into the hospital where Kate was having further chemotherapy for the cancer. She then had to use the nurse's office to do another interview on Radio 2. We then went back to having chemotherapy, and then she went on to TV studios to do some local TV work. All day long, the hashtag across Twitter was trending, and Kate's phone was red hot with the amount of tweets, the amount of messages, the amount of inspiring comments that we were getting for the campaign across the NHS. And it's something that we look back on now and think that was one of the turning points again in the campaign. And then Kate was being asked again to go and talk at different events, and some weeks for Kate it would be chemotherapy today, talk in London tomorrow, the following day she'd be back at work for a day, and then next week she would have the usual infections and everything that she used to get after having the chemotherapy. So we decided to take it on a tour in the UK in June 2015. Because she was being asked to speak at so many events, we thought, let's take a week out of our schedules, let's put the word out there that we're going to do this, and see what response we got. And within an hour, Kate had 60 invites to go and talk at different events. So we had to consolidate some of that into 16 events that we could go and talk at in a week. And so Kate delivered 16 inspiring talks, the 16th being equally as good as the first, and this was very much around where the campaign's come from, but also what's next for the campaign, and also what's next for Kate and I. It now operates in over 20 countries, so we know that across the world, the Hello My Name Is campaign is operational. But my plan and my legacy is that it's operating in every country across the world, and that's what I want my legacy to be, obviously on behalf of Kate and I, for the campaign. Just a few, excuse me, just a few weeks ago I returned from a 3-week trip of Australia and New Zealand, where we delivered 21 talks in 25 days across various cities, and the uptake and the engagement and the passion shown by the people that work in healthcare across Australia and New Zealand was unbelievable. And it was strange to see how far the campaign has come through social media. The power of social media is unbelievable, and it's completely relatable to the campaign. So in the last 4 years, it's had over 1.8 billion Twitter impressions. I'm not going to tell you what a Twitter impression is, I'm sure you all know. Some events I go to have to talk them through Twitter. It's the start of that relationship. We do have global ambassadors across the world that actively support the campaign and are the role models for the campaign. And it says on there, yeah, 1 million people every 36 hours are treated in the NHS. If the campaign makes a difference for one person anywhere in the world, then all the hard work that Kate put in before she died and all the hard work that I'm continuing to put in has been worth it, because it's made a difference to that one person. And I think one of the key messages is that some people, if they're lucky, might only come into contact with healthcare workers or hospitals once in their life, but for them that's their only experience of healthcare. People that work within healthcare obviously experience that every single day, but we need to make sure that that experience is equally as good for everyone that comes into contact with them. And one of the things that the Chief Exec at Leeds always says is, if you treat people as though they are a member of your own family or a close friend, then you can't go too far wrong in terms of treating them how you'd want to be treated. And I know that, you know, healthcare is under a lot of stress and financial pressures, but given the resources available and given the time available, we should be treating them as though they are a member of our own family. So then as we move forward into the end of June, July, sort of last year, it was becoming clear that the time between Kate finishing her chemotherapy and the cancer waking up was getting shorter and shorter. So it started off at 15 months, it was then sort of 9 months, and then 6 months and 4 months and so on. And we had to make a decision then, do we want to pursue further chemotherapy, or do we want to say this is the time that we've been not wanting to happen, but we knew it was going to happen at some point, and so we made that decision. And Kate was, originally, Kate wished that she could die at home, but as time went on, we knew that that probably wasn't going to be possible, as much for me and for the family as for anybody else. So we made the decision that she would go into St Gemma's Hospice, which is an amazing organisation in Leeds, which many hospices are, great organisations. And it was somewhere that Kate had delivered 2 talks over the last few years as well, so it was quite a poignant place for her to pass. But irrespective of that, before she died, she set some fairly challenging targets again, as she did in her whole life. So one of the targets was to get the new Prime Minister of the country to endorse the campaign. So following the Brexit result, obviously we had a change of Prime Minister. Theresa May had been in her job 3 weeks, and Kate was like, I want Theresa May to endorse the campaign. And the second thing that she wanted to do was to reach £250,000 for charity before she died. At the time that she set that challenge, we were at about £210,000. Through the power of social media, we got to £250,000 in about 5 days, I think. So that's another part of social media that's amazing. I mean, Kate had like 45,000 followers when she died, and to achieve £250,000 was unbelievable. And the picture there on the right hand side is Kate and I celebrated with a glass of fizz in the hospice, reaching that milestone, reaching that target. The second challenge around Theresa May was a bit more difficult to get, but through the contacts that we'd amassed, we managed to get Theresa May to endorse the campaign through writing a letter to Kate, a handwritten letter, saying, "Dear Kate, my name's Theresa." And then she went on to talk about how proud she was of the work that Kate had done in her life, and how proud Kate should be of the work that she'd done in her life as well, and how her legacy will continue, not just across the NHS, but just across healthcare in general. So that was quite a poignant time as well. But then we refer back to memorable dates as well. So like I said, 23rd of July 2005, it was the happiest day of my life when Kate and I got married. 23rd of July last year was our 11th wedding anniversary. But it was also the saddest day of my life because of the day when Kate died. So on our 11th wedding anniversary, in a hospice in Leeds, surrounded by family and friends, Kate passed. And she actually passed to the music that she wanted to pass to. She was in control to the end. You know, she knew what was happening. She knew that she wanted to die at that point, and she did. And yes, a very sad day. But on the flip side, because she was no longer in pain, because she was no longer in any kind of distress, which she'd been through so much in the previous 5 years, it was almost a relief for the friends and family as well, because she wasn't in that pain. And I look back and think to myself, and people say how sad and how unfortunate it is, which it is, but Kate and I had the chance to talk about things before she died. The atrocities that go on in this world at the minute, people don't get that chance, and they're the people that aren't lucky. You know, Kate and I were lucky to have had each other for as long as we did, to be able to talk about things as openly as what we could, and to be sure that we planned everything that we wanted to plan. And I think it is a sad day, but like I said, it was a relief as well. And then through social media, Kate lived her final few days through social media, which many of you might have followed on Twitter. And she wanted to do that. She wanted to make sure that people knew what was going on. So as soon as close family and friends knew that she'd died, I put the tweet out at the bottom saying that she'd passed. And then within sort of 10 minutes, the responses coming through were unbelievable. You know, it was BBC breaking news across the news channels. We were getting reports from Canada, from Australia, from various other parts of the world about how sorry they were that she'd passed, but also sending messages of condolence for the family. Sir Richard Branson publicly tweeted about Kate, and he also sent a really nice private email to myself. And then various other people from across media, healthcare, and celebrities all messaged to pass on their thoughts and condolence. And it just shows, once again, social media, but also how inspiring and impactful Kate actually was in the world to many people. So what's next? So I'm currently on a 12-month sabbatical from the job that I've been doing for the last 17 years. I'm on a global tour, so this is part of that global tour. I'm trying to achieve as many countries as we can and as many organisations within the UK as we can across the next 10 months now. We've recently had a play commissioned that's going to be all about Kate's life. I'm in the middle of writing a book which is called The Other Side of the Other Side, which is trying to explain to people that are going through something similar to what I've been through, trying to help them, how they can cope and how they can go through it. We've also recently had a song released all about the campaign, which went to number 7 in its first week of release. And a lot of that has got to where it got to because of social media. And the reason why all those things are coming into play is because I've now set a new challenge for the campaign, which is to reach £500,000 for the 2 charities that we support by the end of next year, which I think is an achievable target. We're currently at £325,000, so you know we've got sort of 14 months to achieve the rest. So I think it's achievable. So as I just come to wrap up, there is a short video on here, but I don't think it'll work. So I'll talk it through. But once again, this is available on the website, and it's all around the legacy, and it's all around making a difference for other people. So I've talked through life plans. Obviously, life plans, everyone can have a life plan, but they can change quite easily. I'm sure everyone's been thinking about what their memorable dates have been in their lives. And like I said, mine is the 23rd of July. And then the third and final thing was around legacy. And what do you want to be remembered for when you die? You know, somebody mentioned to myself a few weeks ago around Kate's legacy. You know, people say that it's left for people. People leave a legacy for others. Actually, they said, yes, she's left it for people, but it's actually been left within people because people really do feel that it makes a difference. And it's such a simple message that makes a difference. And the video that is on there, it's like I said, about a 20-second video. It's Kate just saying about her own legacy and around how communication has improved within the NHS and how name to be remembered, but also since Kate's died, I've actually not personally being in hospital with a friend or relative. However, I have had quite a lot of people mention it to me. So sadly, I had a heart attack a few months after Kate died, and he was in hospital. I couldn't go and visit at the time, but he was in hospital, and he said that everyone did introduce themselves. They didn't even know who he was, but they did introduce themselves.
So we often get requests for sort of patient groups. Can you do some training so we can create an online group where we can sort of interact with each other? And the other reason really is that there is a growth of Facebook patient-generated groups, and the difficulty with those is there's no control over how they're moderated and no control over what the information is that's circulated in there. So previously when I was working with the CCGs up in Lancashire, we've got examples of stress and anxiety groups and other groups up in Lancashire that have got patients interacting with each other and arranging to meet up because somebody's prescription's finished and somebody saying, well, I've still got some, we can meet up and you can have some of mine. So this goes on all the time. These groups go on because they're moderated by patients with often have been set up for the right reasons, but you've got very little control over what goes in there. So the first one, I'm going to show you, the first video is an interview with the AF nurse, atrial fibrillation, which is irregular heartbeat, and the impact on stroke, so they work very closely with the stroke team, and then also with the patient, and they're going to talk about how they use social media to support each other.
My name's Jodie. I'm a stroke prevention nurse. My main role is working with patients who have atrial fibrillation and making sure they're on the correct management for stroke prevention. Atrial fibrillation has a 5 times higher risk of stroke, and strokes caused through atrial fibrillation are more severe than any other stroke. Patients who have atrial fibrillation strokes are unlikely to go home afterwards and are most likely to go into long-term care. And I think one of the biggest issues is that patients who have AF potentially don't know that they have AF. I have patients contact me through Facebook Messenger asking me for advice. Patients have even messaged me to ask me for advice on cholesterol and what they should do. And that's saved a trip to the GP practice. So from a cost saving perspective, it has reduced that a little bit. And I feel the patients who use the Facebook page feel confident that if they have any questions, there is a professional, a clinical professional on the end of that message supporting them through the process. I've had patients who have suffered with VTEs following flights, who've messaged me for advice about what they should be doing for their management. So although it is an AF support page, I've found lots of different experiences coming through and lots of different questions, and I feel that we've made some progress in helping that patient to get the best medical advice and management. Patients respond very differently to the Facebook page. Patients are very motivated in managing their own self-care and giving sound advice to other patients. Some patients can be quite negative about some of the new medications.
Have their own experience, and the only people who can understand that experience is other people who've suffered the same. You know, all your friends will say, oh, I know how you feel, and unless they've suffered the same type of thing, they really haven't got a clue. They don't even come to the start. So using Facebook, where you can share your experiences and look at other people's experiences, you can gain their experience at the same time. It's a means of inputting yourself, having some input to other people's thoughts, and by means of contacting any of the nurses or any of the doctors, if you have a problem, they can be onto it very, very quickly. Everybody has their own source and their own different way of thinking. A clinician will obviously only be purely their way of thinking, but experiences from other patients are different than what a clinician, because unless he is a sufferer, he only sees it from the medical point of view. Everybody has their own source and their own different way of thinking. A clinician will obviously only be purely their way of thinking, but experiences from other patients are different than what a clinician, because unless he is a sufferer, he only sees it from the medical point of view. There are obviously changes in medicine on a day-to-day basis. New way of testing, new way of different drugs on a day-to-day basis. Unless you're up to date with that aspect of the medicine, you'll fall behind. And life can change. As with me, my life changed by changing the drug. I wouldn't have known about it or done anything about it unless we heard about that impulse. I've used it on many occasions before, with all my families on holidays, interacting with people, commenting on other people's experiences. I can see Facebook getting stronger and stronger on this type of subject. It can be used in other aspects of medicine, not just particularly the AF support.
I suppose the difference that these nurses do as well, they have a public page as well, so they're able to promote the work they're doing publicly as well as having a closed Facebook group, so they get the benefits of using both types of Facebook. So within that team you've got at least 5 nurses who help manage that page and the group, and we've also got a consultant as well who'll lend support as well with advice that goes on there. I mean, one example of that video is still there, was created by the nurses interviewing the AF consultant, and he was doing a little interview about the impact of AF on stroke, and that got 20,000 views in a weekend when we posted it across all of the primary care pages. So it can have quite an impact, and it helps recruit more people into that group. The other video I'm just about to show now, this is slightly different. This is a cardiac rehabilitation team, so these are more physios rather than nurses. But the patients that go into it have had a heart attack and are on some kind of exercise program, support program, to get them healthy again. So they come from a slightly different perspective, and you'll see from when they talk to you what it's all about. It's around getting information out to the community.
One of my daughters introduced me to computers a long time ago, and so I became familiar with Facebook. It was a good idea keeping in touch, and then seeing the cardiac group on Facebook was very good, because there were times when I'm a little bit worried, wondering if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm not feeling too good. Should I be feeling like this? I don't know. But I can put a question up there and ask somebody, and lo and behold, given a little bit of time, both people from the cardiac team and the patients were sort of emailing back via Facebook and saying, oh, well, do this, try that. If you're in pain, phone 99. This was a few months after the initial heart attack, which happened, and I was getting chest pain, used the GTN spray, didn't subside, used it again, it was still there, and so I put a message out on Facebook.
Well, there is a chance that if Dad hadn't posted that on the group, or the group wasn't there for him to do that he wouldn't have phoned 9. He might have waited. And who knows what would have happened if he had have waited, because me and my sister at work, we're there for you, but you can't always be really there. And you just don't know, do you? If you hadn't had that ability to post on the group, it could have been a hell of a lot worse, wouldn't it? I think that it was probably quite a defining moment there, wasn't it, when you put that message on the wall, because that enabled you to manage your own health, didn't it, though?
Yes, that's right.
And then, a member of staff, in a way, intervened and said, yes, you do need to come in.
Yes.
So that, I don't know, like I say, what would have happened. And that's quite a massive thing. It's a wonderful thing Facebook is, and the power of it's phenomenal. And quite often with groups, they are formed by people who aren't medically trained. So you have more that confidence, have you, to know that you're getting the right information.
Okay, we set up the page because we felt it was probably something that we were lacking, an area where patients' families could come and speak to us. If the patients' families couldn't attend clinics, then they didn't really have maybe answers to the questions that they needed. So it was a nice opportunity for them to be able to speak to us directly with any queries, any questions, any concerns that they had. It's beneficial for the patients themselves because they're able to converse with each other, they're able to share their own experiences, how they dealt with things, how they find things since they've been discharged. And it's nice for patients to see that whereas they might feel quite alone in a situation, that there are other people going through just the same and they're able to converse with them appropriately. Feedback has been all positive. Patients' families have been quite welcoming that they've had the opportunity to get their questions answered. And I think it's something that if we didn't have the Facebook page there, then they would have been waiting a lot longer to air their concerns and to get the answers to the things that they needed.
We really need our service to be as accessible and as convenient as possible. And we moved a lot of our services out into the community because of that and worked from a lot of community gyms, but we were still finding that there was a lot of patients that couldn't attend those sessions. So it might be that they had work commitments, family commitments, they might have been completing university, college courses, or just very elderly, and even making those services closer to home still wasn't accessible for them. So we thought that social media and using Facebook would be a good way of being able to bring the programme into their own home, that they could access it at a touch of a button on either their phone or their computers. The team on the whole were very, very keen to take part in the project. We're quite a young team, so we're all very familiar with technology ourselves. We all have Facebook and we all use it. We were perhaps concerned in terms of how much work it would be for us if patients were posting a lot of clinical questions on there and the speed of us needing to reply to those. But actually what we found over time is that we can be much more of a monitoring role, and patients and relatives answer their own questions and start discussions between themselves, and they're actually very capable of doing that. So we don't need to directly answer. Is that we see a lot of patients once they've been discharged from hospital, but there's often a few weeks before they'll actually come into clinic with ourselves. And it's in that time that actually patients and the relatives have an awful lot of questions. It might be that they start to have side effects with the medications. It might be that they've recently been discharged from hospital after heart surgery and they're wondering what they can do at home. And before that, we'd often find that patients would be coming into clinic and saying, I haven't done anything for a few weeks, I wanted to wait for this appointment, I didn't know what I could do. And it's really nice having Facebook that actually they're just writing those questions on there and we can answer that immediately for them, and there isn't any delay in their recovery. Then they're able to get out, get active and do the right things to help them improve their health and to get them over their recent event without that unnecessary delay with it. And that's what's important for us, that we can provide care really quickly rather than waiting to maybe get into a GP appointment to ask about the medication. It may be something that we're perfectly capable of dealing with within the team, and actually it doesn't warrant a GP appointment. And to be able to answer those queries and to make patients more confident and to reassure them and their families sometimes that these things are normal and they are a normal process of people getting over a heart event has been really useful.
So as Sonia, the nurse who spoke at the end there, told us, they've got very much the whole team support that programme. So they don't just have it around clinical discussions, they also do some quite fun things. They did a lot of fundraising around, they did an event around rowing and how many miles they could row the staff were, and they had a kind of a regular log of it as a fundraising activity, and you could kind of see the progress as it went on. It complements an active public page, so they are using the public side as well as the closed group. And these are just a selection of some of the videos that they produce quite regularly. So you've got patient videos there, you've also got interviews with heart consultants, some educational videos they do as well. And plus they do a lot of exercise videos they'll post on there, so they can show people how to different exercise and how they can get back to health through doing that. So the final video I'm going to show you is, this is quite an interesting one. This is around multiple sclerosis, and this is a really, really active group that's set up, and it's been running about sort of 18 months, 2 years, but the conversations that go in there are quite interesting, and these are one of the areas that they often are prone to on the kind of organic sites from people coming in trying to sell them things. So when we set this up, we did originally have quite a few people wanting to join, and then we're trying to sell them different kind of mobility equipment and things like that. So they had to do a bit of policing at the start to make sure the people that were joining were MS patients, and it was for the right reason.
I'm Nikki Embryon. I'm one of the clinical nurse specialists in MS at the Royal Stoke MS Centre. I've worked here for 20 years as an MS specialist nurse, and Facebook was something that I thought might work well with some of our MS patients. So the group was set up about 18 months or so ago, and it is going exceptionally well. We have almost 250 patients now that have joined the group, and it's worked well because it's a private forum for patients to gain information if they want to, but more so because patients have found such a lot of benefit from chatting to one another in this closed forum. It is open to family members if they wish to, so we do get some questions from carers of people with MS, but people with MS say that they like chatting to other people who have MS and understand what they're living with. Some questions they will direct to the MS nurse, but to be honest, I am probably going on 2 or 3 times a week at the moment just to monitor, to look at some of the comments that have been put out, and it seems to be running itself. Someone will perhaps ask a question about a symptom of MS, say pain for example, and we're getting more than 15 comments on each of these questions with MS to share positive thoughts, positive comments, to share ideas, and to recognise the importance of education and information, not only for newly diagnosed patients but for patients right through.
A relapse or something. Just for example, you can ask the question and you can get the advice. I haven't asked a question for a while because everything's going smoothly for me at the moment with my MS. So, but I do read it. I do generally log on to Facebook every day actually. Bit of a Facebook person. But yeah, it's just so easy to use. It's just so easy to click on the group and actually just read the comments, just see what's going on. So that really helps, because it's people in the same boat. Yes, I use my tablet and my mobile phone. So yes, so I'm always on. If I'm not at work, I'm always on something technology. Because there is some patients, we all actually go to the hospital to have our drug treatment at the same time, and we are really, really close now because we meet every 28 days. We'll sit there having our Thai saburi, and we have cups of tea and cake and sandwiches, and we just have a good natter. It's just like a couple of hours where you can just sit down, relax, and just talk to your friends, because we are close friends now, and we talk to each other outside of Facebook as well. So it's always nice.
So just in terms of some key considerations, obviously the governance, the equipment and consent. One of the comments made earlier around access to staff to use social media, things like that have to be agreed with senior leadership within the trust. The governance processes we use for this are very similar to what we've been using with Skype. So it's been clinically led. So things like privacy impact assessments and all those sorts of things that you make sure you've got underpinning the programme. But once you've got a lot of that, and plus you've got the clear boundaries so the patients are aware of what they can and can't do through the groups. And we do get a lot of it where people are referred to ring the clinic or to email them on specific things. And we've also, it's important you get a lot of training and of various different toolkits we can provide for staff. But again, once the staff are educated in using it and they feel confident in using it, then a lot of the ideas come from themselves. And these are just what we're doing on the next step. So we're about to start a similar project at Walsall Hospital around respiratory clinics. So that's kind of the next one. And we're also just about to start Parkinson's disease and dementia support as well. So we're getting a lot of interest in that, as well as epilepsy support. And then just at the bottom, this was something that's come out of the staff. They want to have some live Q&A discussions around things like medication and things like in MS, it will be managing pain and things like that. So we're going to be, early in the new year, we'll be using Facebook Live for that as well. So that's an exciting development of how we're going to be using that. And that's that.
Thank you very much, Mark. Wasn't it great to hear the patients themselves telling us what they got out of being in social media channels like Facebook groups? Do we have any questions? There are a few on Slido. Anyone want to put their hand up for a question? Mark, you might need to come back. If you haven't used Slido before, by the way, if you look on your programme, it tells you the web addresses, and you just put the hashtag EngageWell in. And we've got the poll going. We've had 27 replies so far to the question we put out on Slido. We've got someone with a hand up though, doing it the traditional way. Fantastic. Sorry.
Hi Mark. Obviously I understand the closed Facebook group is manned by clinicians. I'm just wondering, have you had any issues from Facebook itself, obviously, with these people are declaring that they've got health conditions, with any kind of like advertising or things being targeted at them?
No, no. As I mentioned earlier, the only thing we did have was in the MS group. We had a couple of people that asked to join the group, and some of them manage it slightly differently. So the MS one is a little bit tighter now, but they would get a request to join the group, and then the person would sit in the group, and you would assume they were an MS patient, and then they started posting links to products, and then we found that the products were, obviously they were part of the products, similar to what you do get in the organic group. So there are, if you get, say, a weight management group that's been organically created, I've seen instances where there are people putting links to diet pills and different things like that. Well, you know, it's kind of, because they're being moderated by patients, they've not got the kind of often the robust sort of backing behind them to deal with that. But in terms of the way the MS works now, they restrict it to people on their list. So we've not had anything around advertising or any problems on that really. The only way it might develop as well, we're starting to look at the third sector and seeing where the third sector can help with some of the input with the information, particularly on the dementia project I mentioned earlier. So that would be kind of, we'll probably get Dementia UK or something like that would be part of the group as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's not an overnight job. This essentially my background's a comms background, so I've sort of seen it from both sides. So often it will be a comms restriction on this, and well, actually we're not comfortable about clinicians using it and interacting with patients. But when you sit down with them and explain what the types of conversations that are there, there's no way a comms person will be able to have the conversations that they're doing with patients. So it's kind of, there's a little bit of trust there, and I think once they see that there's the training and that involved. So it's very different to just frontline clinicians going off and doing their own thing. I suppose in terms of persuading, it's been a journey that's been going on for quite a while, led by clinicians essentially through. So a lot of the work down in Staffordshire started with the CCGs and the Technology Enabled Care Steering Group that they have. That's clinician led.